Okay, essential requisites of a contract. So this means that since they are essential requisites, if one of them is missing, then there is no contract. So there are three essential requisites of a contract. So these three must be present. So consent, subject matter, and consideration. We'll discuss them one by one. So consent is the meeting of minds between the parties on the subject matter and the cause of the contract. There's concurrence of offer and acceptance. Now, the requisites for consent, on the other hand, is plurality of subject. So subject means the actors in the contract. So like for instance, in a contract of sale, the actors are the seller and the buyer. So there must be at least two persons, so plurality of the subject. No? On other contracts, like a contract of lease, the actors there is the lessee and the lessor. So there must be plurality of the subject. You cannot give consent if you are alone in the contract. You know? There's only one person in the contract, except if it is gratuitous, like but still it needs the plurality of subject. So that's the requisite. Number two, legal capacity, meaning the person or the persons who are giving consent must have legal capacity and not disqualified by law. So at least of legal age and not disqualified by law because of mental or mental incapacity or legal incapacity. Number three, the intelligence and free will of consent must be present. No? So meaning if the person is giving consent at the time or at the moment, he or she must be intelligent and freely given. So it must be voluntary, not compelled by any vices or force or intimidation or violence. No? Number four, there must be manifestation of the intent of the parties. So here the parties must show why they must manifest or show their intent, why they are entering into the contract. Number five, there is cognition on the other party, meaning there is awareness on the matter of manifestation. And number six, this 4 and 5 must conform to each other. No? So there is conformity of manifestation and cognition. In some cases, it falls under contracts of adhesion. Now, what is a contract of adhesion? It is one where there is already a prepared form of the contract and it contains the stipulations that the contracting party desires. And it simply asks the other party to agree. So it just simply says, okay, you can sign here. So there's already a form, okay? Here in the Philippines, we often encounter this kind of contracts when you buy or purchase airline tickets or if you travel to Mindanao, like ship tickets, no? Or ferry tickets. Yeah. So the contract of carriage, the terms and conditions is written in the ticket itself. And the ticket is the contract is written using a font which is very small. No? And the buyer of the ticket can barely read the stipulations therein. So this kind of contract is according to our system of law here, we do not follow the theory of cognition. But what we do follow is the theory of manifestation. So cognition is being aware. Manifestation is showing to the other party that this is your intention, and then the other party recognize that intention. So our civil law does not does the offer and acceptance concur only when the offeror comes to know and not when the offeree merely manifests his acceptance. Okay. So this is the flow of a contract. So first step is the preparation or negotiation. So the buyer makes an offer to the owner, and when the owner agrees, so there's a contract. So we proceed to stage 2, perfection or birth. And then delivery comes next after the parties in a contract will deliver, or consummation comes next upon the delivery of the item and the delivery of the price by the owner. No? So stage 3 is consummation, performance, and termination of the contract. But in some cases, there is another scenario, which is here shown as number 2. So first would be preparation. Buyer makes an offer to the owner, but instead of agreeing, the owner will not agree, but make a counter offer. That's shown here as number 2. So instead of agreeing, the owner makes a counter offer. So for example, the buyer says that is this your property, sir? Yes. We want to buy this property at 5,000 pesos per square meter. So the owner will not agree, but makes a counter offer. So the owner will say, yes, I will sell it to you if you buy it at 6,000 pesos per square meter. So that is not uh, unqualified acceptance, but an acceptance which is qualified, no? Because there is a counter offer. Now, when the owner makes a counter offer, it's now the buyer's turn to agree with the counter offer. So if he agrees with the counter offer, then that would be the perfection or birth of the contract. So when the buyer pays and the seller gives the item, then there is consummation or performance and termination of the contract. So elements of valid offer. And elements of valid acceptance. So the offer must be definite and the acceptance must be unequivocal. Then the offer must be complete and the acceptance must be unconditional. Then number 3, both offer and acceptance must be intentional. No? So here the offer must and the acceptance or agreement. So these are the elements. So in some cases, when the offer is not accepted and then the offerer dies, or any of the party dies, then the offer becomes ineffective. So in some cases, the offer becomes useless, no? Nawala. So these are the instances when the offer becomes ineffective. When there is death, severe interdiction, insanity, or insolvency of either party. So the offerer dies or the offeree dies, or civil interdiction. So what is civil interdiction? This is legal incapacity for one who is imprisoned for more than 6 years. No? So if you are found guilty of committing a crime and the penalty is more than 6 years imprisonment, then you cannot enter into a contract because you no longer have legal capacity. And insanity, meaning not of sound mind. The insolvency, meaning cannot pay debt when they fall due. But he has assets, but not enough to pay for the debts. So number 2, when the express or implied revocation of the offer by the offeree. So there is revocation by the offeree. Then qualified or conditional acceptance of the offer, which becomes a counter offer. So that is shown in the diagram, a counter offer. Number 4, when the subject matter becomes illegal or impossible before acceptance is communicated. So if the subject matter, like for example, is firecracker, you want to buy a firecracker for like say 1 peso each. Then before acceptance was made, a decree was given by or handed out by the president making firecrackers as illegal. So imo nag-illegal. Therefore, the offer becomes ineffective. Now, if there are uh, requisites for accepting the offer. So if the offer states a period like expiration of the offer, then it must be made. It must be followed. No? The stated fixed period in the offer. If there is no stated fixed period, so when will the offer expires? So its offer is made to a person who's present, then acceptance must be made immediately. But if the offer is made to a person who is not present, meaning he is not currently within the community or the city, then acceptance may be made within such time that an answer can be received from him. Because in some cases, acceptance would uh, be revoked before it comes to the knowledge of the offerer. Okay, we have rule on advertisements as offers. So how about advertisements in newspapers? They offer. You consider them offer. So according to the law, they are not offers, but not definite offer, but they are mere invitation to make an offer. In some cases, there are people who advertise bidding, no? Like bidding for catering of 1,000 persons. So that kind of advertisement is not an offer, but only inviting caterers to make proposals. So it's only an invitation to make proposals, and advertiser is not bound to accept the highest or lowest bidder. So that's the rule on bidding. Okay. So this is what you call option contract. So option is given to the buyer when the offerer has allowed the offeree a certain period to accept. So meaning reserve the product or object for a number of days. So example of this is if you buy a condo unit and you don't have the money yet, you're still planning to apply for a loan in the bank. So the salesman would offer that we can reserve this for you, sir, if you want. No? We will reserve this unit for you for 30 days. So that is what you call option, reserving the product. So can that option be withdrawn by the seller, by the agent or the salesman? Can he withdraw that at any time? Yes, the answer is yes. As long as it is not whimsically or arbitrarily made. No? Because the withdrawal may result to awarding of damages if whimsically or arbitrarily made. Arbitrarily meaning debatable. So option can be withdrawn anytime if it is not founded upon a consideration. So according here, it, if it is founded upon a consideration or payment, then it is termed as reservations fee. So let's say, for example, again, the salesman of the condo unit says, I can reserve this for you, sir, but you have to pay reservations fee. And you ask, how much is the reservations fee? 5,000 pesos, sir. And then you will reserve this unit for me? Yes, sir, for 30 days. So in that case, if you pay the 5,000 pesos to the salesman of the condo unit, then that condo unit is reserved for you for 30 days. And that reservation or option contract cannot be withdrawn. No, so it should be the seller should wait for the expiration date of 30 days. Now, there are persons under the law who cannot give consent to a contract. So, number one, minors, those below 18 years of age, insane or demented persons, buang or demented, giango-ango, illiterates, deaf mutes who do not know how to write. So, if you answer only deaf mutes without saying who do not know how to write, your answer is partially correct and partially wrong. So it should be wrong. No? So it should be complete. Deaf mutes who do not know how to write. Intoxicated person and those under hypnotic spell. So it's not, this is not, this is not bounded. No? This is not bound, or this should not, it's separate. So if a person is intoxicated, then he cannot enter into consent, he cannot give consent to a contract. If he gives consent, then it's voidable. If a person is under hypnotic spell and enters a contract, the contract is voidable. Then persons under mistake, because mistake deprive intelligence, and persons who are induced by fraud. No? So in these cases, the contract entered into by minors, insane, deaf mutes that know the right, and so on and so forth, are voidable. So meaning they can be valid. So voidable is a contract which can be valid. No? Okay. So the rule on contracts entered into by minors is generally voidable. But upon reaching the age of majority, if the minor ratifies the contract, then the contract becomes valid. So what is ratification? So I think we already discussed this in the first part. Ratification is the agreement, no, of the minor, and he is no longer contesting the sale or contesting the contract. So ratification. Number two, they were entered into by a guardian, and the court who has jurisdiction approved the sale. No? So the guardian of the minor entered the contract in behalf of the minor, and the court approved it. So let us see. The contract was made for necessities such as food, but here a person is bound to give them support should pay. Okay. Now necessities does not mean only food. There are several necessities. That is, these are food, shelter, clothing, education. No? If a minor therefore comes to a boarding house and enters into a contract because he wants to lease the boarding house because he's going to go to school, then that contract is valid because that boarding house is considered as shelter, necessity. So if a minor would enter into a bookstore and buy books, then that contract is also valid. Books are considered necessities or as education, as part of education. So the rule on minors, the prohibition to enter the contract is not absolute but relative, because there are cases where the minor enters the contract and the contract is valid. Okay. So now letter D, the minor is stooped for having misrepresented his age and misled the other party to believe that he is not a minor. So this happens when the minor, let's say he's 17 years old and he looks bulky, and then he has a mustache, no? And he can mislead other party that he's already of majority age, that he can enter into contract. So that contract becomes valid. And the minor is stup, meaning he cannot retract from his admission that he's not a minor. On the other hand, there are persons who are disqualified to enter the contract by law. So these are the persons who are suffering civil interdiction, already discussed, hospitalized lepers, those suffering leprosy, and hospitalized because of the medicine they cannot make sound decisions. Then prodigals, deaf and dumb who are unable to read and write, and those by reason of age, disease, weak mind, and other similar causes cannot, without outside aid, take care of themselves and manage their property. So they become easy prey for deceit and exploitation. Now, in some cases, our freedom to give consent is vitiated. There are vices that surrounds us. What are these vices? Number one, violence. Number two, intimidation. Number three, Anju influence. Then we have fraud, no? And number five is mistake. So the first one is violence. So this happens when there is irresistible physical force, and such force is determining cause for giving consent. So let's say, for example, you are the owner of a property, and uh, the property beside you is a mall, no? Very rich person. Then this rich person comes to you and pointed a gun in your face. Hey, I want to buy your property. If you're not selling your property, I will blow your head. So in that case, that is violence, no? And he is bringing a contract and then forcing you to sign the contract. So you have no choice but to give in and sign the contract. So that there is violence present. And in that case, the contract is not valid but voidable. No? So if you would ratify the contract, then it becomes valid. But if you contest the contract or attack the contract within the period required by law, then the contract could be void, declared void by the court. And then there is intimidation when there is determining cause for the contract, then the threatened act is unjust and unlawful, it's real and serious, and it produces well-grounded fear that the person making it will carry it over. So in the previous example, instead of the mall owner pointing a gun to your face, instead of pointing a gun, he now comes to you and present you a deed of sale stating that he's going to buy your property. And if you are not going to sign these papers, you will not see your children anymore. Okay, he will say, hey, you want that you do you want something will happen to your children? So that is intimidation by mere words, and you are threatened. So you sign that paper, otherwise you will no longer see your children. Okay, number three is Anju influence. This happens when a person takes improper advantage over the will of the other. So using his power, authority, or moral ascendancy, age, or mental capacity over the other. No? So let's say, for example, instead of mall owner, who is now forcing you to sell your property, it is now your manager or your pastor, your church pastor, who comes to you. So he takes improper advantage of his authority. Then, because of his authority, you are compelled to sell your property. So in that case, the contract entered into is voidable again. All of these contracts are voidable. So subject to ratification or can be contested before a court of law. Okay. Number four is fraud. So fraud is deception. So the one party in a contract is induced to enter into a contract through machinations or insidious words of the other. So there are two kinds of fraud, three kinds, I'm sorry. So first is dolo causante or causal fraud, then dolo incidente, and tolerated fraud. No? So the one who is the one which is punished by law here is dolo causante or causal fraud, because the deception made by the other party is very serious, and without that serious fraud, the other party would have not entered into the contract. So this is dolo causante or causal fraud. Now the other two kinds of fraud, incidental fraud, are not so serious, and the innocent party still enters the contract even without the fraud. So, but in this case, the innocent party can demand for payment for damages. Then tolerated fraud, these are merely exaggerating the qualities of the thing or minimizing the defects, no? Or exaggerating the good qualities. So sales talk, tolerated fraud. Then we have the fifth and the last vice. This is mistake. So what is mistake? It's a false belief of something. So this refers to the object, to the nature of the contract, to the principal conditions in an agreement, or error as to person, or error as to legal effect. Say, for example, there is a man who's looking for his son, his lost son, who's been lost for 20 years or more. And then suddenly one shows up and pretended that he's the lost son. So they make time and make efforts to binding themselves once more. No? And then the father decided to give a thing to that person. So decided, okay, this house now will be yours, and I will now move to the province. So there's the donation made by the person, by the father, to the person who pretended to be his son. So in that case, there is error as to the person, no? Because actually that the person who pretended to be his son also was looking for his father, no? So both of them did not know that there was an error, because the person who pretended to be his son was not really pretending, but also looking for a father. His father was also lost for 20 years. And the time he was lost, he was still 5 years old, like that. So there is a mistake or false belief that the person is your son or your father, so you make a donation. So that kind of donation is voidable. We go to the second element of contract, which is object. So the object must be within commerce of man. So existing and potent. It should be legal, not contrary to law or good customs. It must be possible, so meaning it is, again, legal and physically deliverable. It must be determinate as to its kind, determinable without need to enter the new contract, and transmissible. So there are things which the law does prohibits us to make it as object of a contract. So like, for example, number one, things which are outside the commerce of men. So what are these things? Say, for example, I will sell to you very cheap, no? Only 5,000 pesos, the Mactan Bridge. Are you going to buy? Of course not. Why? Because Mactan Bridge falls under commerce, not within the commerce of men. So things which are not within the commerce of men are public things, no? Public places, like Plaza Independencia, like streets, like sidewalks. You cannot sell them because it's not owned by the government, it's owned by the public. It's owned by all of us, no? So number two, intransmissible rights. So these rights cannot be transferred. So this cannot be object of contract. Number three, future inheritance, except in cases expressly authorized by law. So if a son whose parents are still alive would sell his future inheritance, so that sale is invalid. No? Number four, services which are contrary to law, morals, good customs, public order, and so on and so forth. Impossible things or services, objects which are not possible of determination as to their kind. So these services are illegal. Like I will give you 10,000 pesos if you will assassinate your neighbor. Okay? That is illegal. So contrary to law. The third element of contract is cause. So the cause must be immediate, direct, and it must be the most proximate reason why a party or why the parties enter into contract. So requisite of cause that it must exist, it must be true, and it must be legit or legal. Okay. On the other hand, motive is different from cause because motive is purely private reason. It is if it is illegal, it does not invalidate a contract. But if cause is illegal, it would invalidate a contract. No? So these are the difference between cause. Cause is direct, while motive is indirect. Cause is objective and juridical, while motive is psychological or purely personal. The third is cause is always same for each contracting party, but in motive it differs. No, it differs. Now these are the different causes in some contracts. There could be onerous costs. Okay, so in onerous contracts, the prestation or the object of promise of a thing or service by the other. So that is onerous contracts. So if it is remuneratory contracts, meaning service, like contract of employment, so the cost there is the service or the benefit that the other one gets, which is being remunerated or paid. Number three, in contracts of pure beneficence, meaning donation, what is the cost there? Why does a person give? No? So because he is liberal as a donor or benefactor, meaning because he's generous. No? Generous, he loves the person. That is mere liberality. That is the main cause. Okay. In accessory contracts, it is identical with the cause of the principal contract. Let's say you are going to apply for loan and you need the money. No? So if you need the money, then the bank would say, I don't know you. You have no credit record. So we require that you give us a security, like a property. So then you would hand in your title of a property or of a land. So that security is now mortgage. No? So there are now two contracts, contract of loan and a contract of mortgage. So in this case, you entered into contract of mortgage because you want to get the money. So that is, now the accessory contracts cost is the same as the principal contracts cost. Okay, let's go to form of contracts. So what is the form required by law? No? Generally, contracts are consensual, meaning it is by mere agreement, the contract is already perfected. does not require, contracts that not require a form, like a written form, no? So that's why it's stated here in number 1 that may be entered into whatever form as long as there is consent, object, and cause. So these are informal contracts, no? But if the law requires that certain form must be made, must be executed by the parties, like a donation of real property, it must be in written form, like a stipulation to pay interest, transfer of large cattle, sale of land through an agent, contract of anticrisis, contract of partnership, registration of chattel mortgage, donation of personal property in excess of 5,000 pesos, then the law requires that these laws must be in written form. No? So these are called formal contracts. Then we have also contracts which are considered as real contracts. What are these contracts? If they create real rights over immovable properties. Okay, so this must be in writing also. So contract of sale is an informal, but if it involves real property or it involves a personal property of more than 500 pesos, then it should be in writing. So when is form important? Number 1 is for validity, for formal or solemn contracts, for enforceability, because there is statute of frauds requires us to write contracts, no? In black and white, and for convenience. So in the form, public instrument is being described. So what is a public instrument? So sometimes the law would require it should be in public instrument, like a contract of partnership. If the contributions of the partner would exceed the amount of 3,000 pesos, it should appear in a public instrument. So what do you mean by public instrument? So that it is a document which has been acknowledged by a notary public. So meaning the notary public has make a notarial act, no? So ginotaryuhan siya. So that makes it a public instrument. So these are the contracts which must appear in public instrument. Those creating or transfer, extinguish of real rights over real property. Repudiation or renunciation of hereditary rights or of conjugal partnership of gains. So if you do not want to receive part of your inheritance, or you want to renounce, meaning you're waiving, so it needs to be in writing and specifically in public instrument. So there are persons who would renounce their inheritance, no? Like a priest or a nun who has make a vow of poverty. So they can sila mudawat of property because they commit themselves to vow of poverty. Okay, I have a case here. She was a nun and she's renouncing all her inheritance in favor of her brothers and sisters. So she make a public instrument. She made a public instrument. Number 3, special power to administer property of another. So this is agency, no? Special power of attorney. Then cessation of actions or rights proceeding from an act appearing in a public instrument. Cession means here stoppage, you know, cease. It's the same as repudiation or cancellation. So if you cease to act or proceed to your right, or which appears in a public instrument, then you should also write another public instrument. Then we have reformation of contracts. This is a remedy to conform to real intention of parties due to mistake, fraud, inequitable conduct, accident. So when the parties commit a mistake in making a contract, so instead of contract of sale, they made a contract of donation, no? So there is error in the title. Sayop ang typist, no? This contract of sale, ang ibutang contract of donation. Then the remedy here is to reform the contract. So reformation. So is there a prescription or expiration? Yes, it is 10 years from date of execution of the contract. No? Okay. So there are grounds which will validate the remedy. If it's mutual, then the instrument includes something which should not be there or omit. If it's unilateral, then one party was mistaken with the other party, either acted fraudulently or inequitably, or knew but concealed it. No? Then number 3, there is mistake by third persons due to ignorance, lack of skill, negligence, bad faith of drafter, or the one who made the instrument or the document, the clerk or the typist. So there was error on the part of the typist, and others specified by law. So requisites in reformation of contracts: there is a written instrument, there is meeting of the minds of the parties, the true intention of the parties is not expressed in the instrument, and there's clear and convincing proof and facts put in issue in the pleadings. So it is stated in the pleadings, and so therefore it can be reformed. The contract can be reformed. But reformation of contracts does not apply to simple donation while the person is still living. No? Simple donation inter vivos means that person is donating while he is still alive. Or wills, no? What are wills? Wills, pamana ba? Pamana. So wills are also not subject to reformation of contract, because the testator, the one who makes the will, can reform by merely making another will. No? That is known as codicil. So pwede siya maging will to supersede the previous will. Okay, so that ends part 2 of our lesson, and we will stop recording.